today we're going to be using the hand weights. If you don't have hand weights, you know, there's lots of alternatives, water bottles, cans of soup, that sort of thing. But today we're going to use the weights. We're going to try to flow everything together and work consistently through the whole hour. Are you guys, sorry, I thought some of you froze for a second. Are we there? Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, cool. I'm on like a direct connection to the router through a cord, so it should be relatively stable, but the power's been going out all night in North Beach where I've been, so who knows what's happening. If I were to lose you, I'll try my best to come back. Okay, so we're gonna use the weights. If it's too hard, obviously I'll give you modifications. We'll start with basic versions of exercises and then layer, and ditch the weights if they're too hard, too heavy. Somewhere between 1 and 3 pounds is probably that sweet spot for weights. Okay, so we're gonna start on your hands and knees, hands under your shoulders, knees under your hips, and just shift your weight a little bit forward and back, kind of opening up your wrists and opening up through the knees and the hips a little bit just by hinging the pelvis forward and back, keeping neutral through the spine, and then start to take that into a little bit of a circle. You should feel some feedback into the shoulder girdle area and feel like you have to work a little bit around the shoulders in order to keep everything connected and supported. Reverse the direction of your circles. And then come back to the center of all of this and press the floor away, round your lower back up towards the ceiling, scooping up through the low abs, shift your weight back a little bit. And then from tail to head, lengthen back out. And again, push down through the shins, create opposition to stretch the tissue of your back open, and then lengthen back out to one long line. And one more time, rounding your back up towards the ceiling, scooping. You can shift back slightly to help you stretch the low spine. And then lengthen back out to one long line. From here, sit back towards your heels, then dome your back up off of your thighs like a cat and shift that forward. So you're in neutral, you hinge at the hips, you go back, scoop the abdominals up, roll yourself back up, and lengthen from tail to head and start to make this one continuous motion. So you're pushing and pulling, we're just warming up the spine and getting a little bit of movement going in the spine. 2 more. Scoop and lift. And one more time, hinging back and scoop and lift. And then come back to neutral, to the center. Bring your legs all the way together, lengthen through your spine, and let yourself drop down between the shoulder blades a little bit, then push the floor away to connect around the shoulders. So dropping down between the shoulders, push the floor away, lift up through the spine. So as you do this a couple times, part of the reason you're doing this is to find and be able to sustain your serratus anterior connection, which is a really important muscle that wraps kind of around the sides of the ribs, and it's serrated like a serrated knife. It kind of goes in a serrated fashion underneath the rib cage, under the armpit. And this muscle helps to keep our shoulder blades attached to the back of the rib cage, because your shoulder blades are back there and they could go in any direction they wanted because they're just hanging out back there. And so we need to have these rotator cuff muscles, of course, strong, but also these bigger stabilizing muscles like serratus going. So once you find that press of the floor away, keep it. Float one hand up off the floor without any changing. Set that hand back down. Float the other hand off the floor. If one side feels significantly easier, then you know there's some slight imbalance going on. There's no point in your life where you're going to be completely symmetrical. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of asymmetry, just like our faces are slightly asymmetrical. but you want to be strong and stable in any sort of structural asymmetry that you might have. And on your next one, you're going to lift your hand up off of the floor, bring it to your forehead, push the floor away, go into that little bit of rotation, and then square yourself back off to the floor. Each time you rotate back to the floor, make sure that you're still connected around that shoulder, that you're not kind of sinking into the shoulder. Yeah, pushing the floor away, square yourself off. Pushing the floor away. And it's a small amount of rotation. If you're making it big, usually it's because you're losing neutral. One more. And then set your hand down, lift the other hand up, push the floor away, little bit of rotation, square yourself off, little rotation. And if one side feels easier than the other, then you know that you've got some mobility differences that you want to focus on. And press the floor away. 2 more times, rotating through the spine, squaring yourself off, and rotating through the spine. Last one. And then set your hand down, sit back towards your heels, stretch yourself back for a moment, opening up your armpits. You can feel like your sits bones are trying to go back as you're kind of walking your fingers forward in opposition, trying to get a little bit of opening through the lats, through the armpits. And then we're going to come onto our forearms. So you're pushing the floor away, keeping that connection through the shoulder girdle. And you're going to slide one leg out behind you, lift the leg up, level the pelvis, and then tap down and lift back up. So as you're lowering and lifting your leg, you're making sure that your pelvis stays level the whole time, so the whole thing isn't changing. So feeling like your head isn't dropping into the ground, that your head is continuing the line of the spine and of that leg, lifting and lowering, trying to lift from where your leg attaches to the back of your pelvis. The higher the leg goes, the more you've got to pull up on your low abs. 2 more. And last one. Hold your leg up, push the floor away with the bottom leg to rotate the pelvis to the side, then square your hips back off. So you're pushing the floor away, rotating the pelvis, and squaring it off. Exactly, that looks great. Keep that back leg really straight. I know it's heavy, but you're thinking of like it creates opposition out through the top of the head. Pushing the floor away with that standing hip. Doesn't matter to me how much rotation you create, more that you push and you feel that connection. So this is very similar to what we just did with our upper body rotating. Now we're rotating the lower body and keeping the upper body still. 2 more. And last one, keep your pelvis rotated to the side. See if you can take your leg a little bit forward and a little bit back. There might not be very much range of motion there. Little forward, a little back. Don't move your pelvis. Your pelvis is rotated to the side. See if you can push the floor away. Yes, last 2. And last 1. And then bring that leg back in and shake it out for 2 seconds. And then we reach the other leg out behind. As you reach out, try not to collapse through the arms forward. So you're pushing the floor away, lift and lower the leg. Lift and lower. As you're lifting and lowering, you're keeping the leg parallel, you're keeping the pelvis in the same position. You should feel like a lot of stability work happening through the outside of the hip. Lower and lift. Knee is really straight. You'll have to actively focus on pulling up around the quad to keep the knee from bending. Pushing the floor away with the arms, with the shoulders, with the standing hip. Last 2. And last 1. Hold the leg up, push the floor away, rotate the pelvis, square it back off to the floor. Rotate the pelvis, square it off. 4 more. Rotate, square, rotate, square it off, and press. One more time. Keep it in that rotation. Leg is going to go a little bit one way, a little the other way. Whatever direction your kneecap is facing, that's the direction you're trying to go in. And then back towards the direction your heel is facing. One way, the other, one way, the other. 2 more. Little forward, little back, trying to keep the height of the leg. Little forward, little back. Bring the leg in. Sit back towards your heels. And then you're gonna lay on your side and take your arm out underneath you. And so from here, if you can grab a weight if you have one. And you're gonna start with it on your hip. We're gonna start moving our shoulders. So you're gonna hold the weight up. If it's so heavy you can't hold it, then obviously you need a little bit lighter weight. But what I want is that you let your shoulder roll forward a little bit, and then you roll the shoulder back. And just do that a couple times where you're rolling in. I want you to emphasize the rolling back. So the rolling forward and letting the shoulder come forward is subtle. The rolling back is less subtle. Rolling forward is kind of subtle. Rolling back, less subtle. And then once you've kind of connected into the back of the shoulder, turn the palm to face forward. Keep the palm facing forward. And reach the arm out overhead only as far as you can keep your rib connection. And then bend, pull it into your side, extend it out long. So you're trying to keep the front of the shoulder open the whole time. Arm goes out overhead, bend it in and reach. And arm goes out overhead, bend it in and reach down. If you want this to be a more challenging position, reach the arms long. Sorry, those are legs. Reach the legs out long. And find that stacking on the outside of the hip, which will be a lot more difficult to keep from tipping over. 2 more. And last one. And then bend your elbow at your side, just like on the reformer rotator cuff work. So you're rotating, your hand goes down towards your belly, and then you press back up. Feel the back of your armpit, the back of your shoulder is where you want to feel this. And if you'd like, you can hover the legs off the ground. So you're using a little bit more oblique. Try not to let the elbow kind of collapse back behind you. Rotator cuff muscles, those are little tiny muscles. And so we need to work them at low levels. So this shouldn't feel super hard, but that is the kind of work that they need in order to get stronger. If we make it too hard, then the big stuff turns on and the little stuff turns off. Should be feeling something back there by now. Yeah, good. And the weight that I have is like 1.65 pounds because it's a Canadian weight, so it's like an odd number. But so I don't know, 2 pounds should be enough to feel something. The can of soup is probably like 1 pound. So if this is too easy, next time you'll grab something a little heavier. Last one. And then you're gonna take your arm down by your side and turn the palm to face down. Keep your shoulder open. See if you can reach your arm forward and back without tipping over. So obviously you want to tip this way as the arm goes forward. You're trying to keep the legs really stacked, connect the glutes, reach the arm forward, feeling that glide of your scapula, of your shoulder, forward and back. Just go as far as you can, staying stable. The more you activate into your length and create opposition, the easier this will be to not tip over. Yeah, nice. One more time. And then you're going to keep the weight in the same hand and just roll onto your back. Bring the free hand behind your head. Neutral pelvis. So If the weight's too heavy to take overhead a little bit, then it's too heavy and we should ditch the weight and do it without. So you're gonna slide your ribs towards your hips, keeping your pelvis neutral. Once you get up, you can reach the arm forward, and then you're gonna circle the arm around overhead to lower it back down. So you're doing like a half circle, neutral pelvis the whole time and circling around. If you want this to be harder, you could imprint and lift the legs up to tabletop. If you need to work on transverse abdominis connection, then keep the legs down because you can stay neutral with the legs down. Exhaling up and lengthening down. You're trying not to just yank on your neck, that you're using your abs to slide your ribs towards your hips to come up. One more time like this, super simple. And then once the arm is overhead, let's all imprint and lift one leg up to tabletop and then the other. Nod the chin, flex your upper body up. Now you have asymmetrical resistance through the upper body. Stay in the center. One leg is going to reach out and you're going to switch. And exhale, switch and switch. And as you're pushing and pulling through the legs, make sure you're maintaining your imprint. You're sliding the ribs towards the hips. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Bring the legs back into tabletop. Lower the upper body down, set one leg down and then the other. And then we're going to come all the way over to the second side. So lay either with the legs in front of you or with the legs out long. Arm is going to come down by your side, reaching the arm forward, a little roll of the shoulder forward and back, just to feel that connection to the back of the shoulder muscles. So we're trying to feel mostly that opening back and connecting back and in. Opening back, connecting in. And then keep the back of the shoulder connected, palm facing forward. Arm goes up, you should feel that upward rotation of the scapula. Then as the arm comes down, you should feel like the bottom tip of the scapula glides back in towards the spine. Connect the ribs. If it's easy to balance here, you're probably not straight or stacked. So feel like you're keeping those ribs connected, you're balanced on the outside of your hip. Both legs are parallel. And then add your pull, elbow down to the side, reach up. Elbow pulls in, down, and reach up. And start to smooth it together so it's less individual repetitions and more one continuous thought, one continuous movement. Pulling in, reach out and up, and pulling in, reach out and up. Last two. And last one. And then the elbow comes into the side, rotator cuff, so external rotation, trying to not squeeze the shoulder down the back. You're trying to keep the shoulder where it is. The shoulder blade needs to dynamically stabilize so it'll move a little bit, but it's not moving all over the place. You're keeping really stable and still. Yeah, as you open, some of you are kind of turning your hand and extending your elbow. So at the elbow, there's no change happening. At the wrist, there's no change happening. Look down at your arm as you do one rep and make sure you're not letting things change. That's better. You should feel the back of your shoulder working. Another idea for home weights, because I know weights are actually hard to come by these days, is taking some sort of water bottle and filling it with change, pennies. That adds up really quickly. Or if you want to take a break and walk over to Crissy Field Beach, fill it with sand. That might be illegal, but maybe no one will notice. Bring your arm down. Your arm goes forward and then bring your arm back. As your arm goes forward, you go up as high as you can keep your shoulders stabilized and down your back. reaching through the leg, trying to not tip, twist, rotate, and reaching forward, coming back. Using your breath to help you maintain the stability. Should feel like your whole body has to work a little bit to not tip over. Creating opposition, head away from the feet will help. One more. And then come to laying on your back. The hand with the weight in it will keep the weight. The other hand comes behind the head. And neutral pelvis, knees bent, feet sits bones distance apart. Flex your upper body up, your weight goes towards the outside of the hip, and then you're gonna circle around and take the arm overhead. So the arm comes in front of you, you slide ribs to hips and circle around. As you're doing this, you get a nice view of your abdominals. You wanna see that your abdominals are flattening, that you're flattening from hip bone to hip bone. That's that transverse abdominis connection. Exhaling out through pursed lips will help. Make sure the pelvis stays level. You still have that little curve through the lower back. If you wanted to bring your legs to tabletop, you could. I'm gonna do about 3 more. Sliding ribs to hips, come up, arms circles around, and you lower down. Trying to not let the arm as it circles pull you off your midline, your central axis. Last time. And circling around, the arm is going to come forward. You're going to imprint, lift one leg up to tabletop, lift the other leg up to meet it, nod your chin, slide your ribs to your hips, stay there, and single leg stretch. One leg reaches out and switch. And only take the leg as low as you can keep the abdominal connection. Think less about pulling the legs in towards you and more about pressing the legs away. Press the legs away and away and away. And 4, 3, 2, and 1. Tabletop. Lower your upper body down. Set one leg down. Set the other leg down. And then you're going to take the one weight that you have, reach it overhead. Take both arms overhead, so you're holding onto it with both hands, and feel how that pulls the ribs up and the arms down. So feel like you're really trying to keep a hold of your abdominal connection. You're gonna start to circle your arms around one way and lift up, and then you're gonna circle the weight around the other way and lift up. Your elbow might have to bend a little bit to make that happen, but it's not a big bend. If this feels way too easy for you, then grab the other weight that you have. Usually having both weights starts to put it in your neck a little bit more, so trying to avoid that. Sliding ribs to hips, circular motion, and then we're gonna add this to our roll up. So scoot your feet a little bit away from you. If you have anything going on with your body lately, then just do a normal roll up or a half rolled back. But let's just do a normal roll up first altogether. So the weight comes through the center, you peel up through the spine. If you were gonna do half roll back, you just go part way back and come back up. If you're gonna roll all the way down, you open across in front of the hips, roll all the way down. Now, as we add that little circle of the arms, you're still rolling up the center of your spine. So don't roll so far to the side that you move off the center axis. And you go around and circle back down. So it doesn't feel like a real circle. It feels more like a slight favoring of one side of the spine and then a slight favoring of the other side. But it's kind of a bobby pin shape, not a full circle. Using the obliques a little bit more on one side to get you up. And good. One more time. And then lower all the way back down. And take both weights in your hands just to weight the arms down. So you just have them resting on your hands. Bring your legs in, imprint, and lift one leg up to tabletop. Lift the other leg up to meet it. So again, if you have things going on with your back, you can just stay in the center. You don't need to add the rotation. So tip the knees towards one side. Let one side of the pelvis come a little bit away from the floor. Then use your abdominals to pull you back to the center. It's a pretty subtle rotation. You're trying to reach through the top knee. Could you make it big? Yes. But what I want is that the opposite side of the shoulder stays down. So if I'm rotating to the right, my left shoulder blade and left back of my ribs stays down. So I'm creating opposition, not just letting everything get pulled in one direction. Rotate and come back to the center. If that feels good, as you rotate one direction, extend the bottom leg out and then come back to the center. So it's a little like your single leg stretch. You tip one way, bottom leg extends, you come back to the center. Make sure you're keeping your imprint. Slight rotation, extend, and center. Good. Using the abdominals. One more each way. Coming back to the center, set one leg down, set the other leg down, and you're gonna roll onto your side and use the weight on the outside of your top leg. So just resting your hand there and creating a little extra resistance. So stretch that leg out underneath you. 2 kicks forward, forward, point and sweep your leg back. And forward, forward, sweep back. If you want it to be a little harder, the bottom leg can extend out on the diagonal slightly forward. So you have to work a little harder to not tip over. And forward, sweep back. And forward. Good. And last 2. And then you're going to bend your leg in front of you, push your leg out underneath you. If it's too hard, you can bend the bottom knee. And bend the leg in front of you, tabletop-ish, and then press back out. And bend the knee and press, taking it a little more continuously. Push and pull and push and pull, and think of something down there that you're trying to push away from you. Push through your foot. Yeah. If your foot stays in line with the midline of your body, like underneath you, it's easy. So if your foot pulls back under your sit bone like this, it's easy. But if you bring your leg forward towards tabletop, your heel leaves the midline. Yeah, like Amy, you could make it harder by bringing your leg more in front of you as you bend it. Yeah, exactly. So that your heel doesn't stay under the sit bone. Then bend your leg in front of you, rotate your leg towards the ceiling, press it out. So it becomes a big circular motion. Bend in parallel, turn out, press. Bend in parallel, turn out, press, rotate, parallel, bend in, turn out, press, parallel, bend in, turn out, press. Reverse this, so turn out to come in parallel to press out. For whatever reason that feels easier, I think it's because as you're turning out, your leg is in line with the ceiling, or vertical with the pelvis. More vertical with the pelvis. So it's a little easier this direction. Press, and 3, press, and 2, press, and last one, and press it back out. Good, bend both legs on top of each other in front of you. Take both arms forward. Take the top arm, lift it up to the ceiling, reach the top knee forward. As you rotate, you're trying to exhale, soften through the sternum, create some opposition. Feel like the sternum softens in and down. Trying to get those ribs to connect back and around the spine. And then lift your arm back up to the ceiling and come back. And you're gonna come up onto your hand and you're gonna reach the top arm up, thread your arm underneath, round your upper body, and then press your arm back open to the side. Yeah. And my hip butt is still down on the ground. I think most of you know me well enough to know that we're probably not gonna stay down there very long, but this is the easiest version of this. You also can, because your hips are down, you can create more of a stretch. You get a little bit more of the QL all the way through the spine because it's grounded and more stable. So then you're gonna open yourself up and see if you can bring the leg in round, thread the needle, open up to the side, and thread the needle round and open to the side, and thread, flexing the spine, lift and thread. Lift one more time, thread and lift. If this is too hard, set the hip down, flex the foot, 2 kicks forward, forward, sweep back, just 4 times. 2 and 3. One more time, and 4. And set the hip down, bring the leg in, switch everything over to the other side. Take one weight with you, laying out on your side. Knees can start bent. You're gonna extend the leg out. We flex the foot. Weight is pushing down on the leg gently. 2 kicks forward, forward, sweep back. Once that's going well, the bottom leg can extend on that front diagonal. The range of motion might be a little smaller, a little bit harder to keep the pelvis from tipping in either direction. That looks good. As your leg is going forward and back, you're trying to keep the torso still. So as the leg goes forward, you're not rounding or tipping back. As the leg goes back, you're not extending and tipping forward. Yeah, nice. That looks good, everyone. Last 2. And last one. Then bend your leg, bringing your leg forward towards tabletop. Push something away from you. Pull it in towards tabletop. Push it out. And bend and pull it in. And push it out. That looks good, Alex. And bend and press as you pull in a couple more times, bringing your heel forward so it's not directly underneath you still. So this would be underneath me, this would be forward. Big difference in terms of the abdominal work, in terms of the hip work. Obviously, do what's reasonable for your body today. Push and pull one more time. Bend your leg in, turn it out, push it out, staying stacked. All of us have slightly different hip joints, so it doesn't have to be the same range of motion as I'm doing. You're just trying to find your range of motion and work within it. Parallel to bending in front of you, turn out, press out, parallel. Bend in, turn out, press out. And good, everyone. One more like this. And then reverse, bend in, parallel, press, and rotate, parallel, press, rotate. Good. Last two. And last one. And press it out. Good. Come up onto your hand. Hips stay down. Top arm can reach up. And thread the needle around your back. So you're really scooping under. I feel this from one side of my sacrum all the way across my back to the other side, to the other shoulder, and then open back up. And do that a couple times, pushing the floor away, trying to find a stretch. And open. Make sure your fingers aren't pointed forward and your shoulder rolling forward. So ideally the fingers would be out in the line of your mat. One more like that. Flex and rotate, and then press yourself up and bend the knees to flex and rotate, rounding back a little bit, and extend out from there. And rounding back a little bit and extend out. And scoop, curl, push with the arm, and lift, and kind of like a starburst, kind of exploding out, and rounding and flexing. And one more time, then we do that side kick, 4 sets, and reach out, 2 kicks forward, forward, sweep back, and 2, sweep back, 3, and 4. And then set the knees down, come off of there. You're gonna come onto your stomach. If you need a towel under your pelvis, you can. In the studio, you've probably used these kinds of pads with me. If I've had you use that before, then a folded up hand towel would work. That's something that really will never change. So don't feel like you have to grow out of that or get strong enough you don't need it. It's just one of those things that is based on your alignment and you'll probably always need. So weights underneath your forehead, hands holding them, elbows bent, legs extended, connect your glutes, push your pubic bone down into the floor. Keep one hand down on the floor as you float your upper body into a low hover, keeping the other hand attached to your forehead, and then lower back down. Do that a couple times. One hand stays attached to the forehead. You're pulling up on the belly button, alternating between sides, floating up and lengthening down. And floating up, trying to not make it a high lift. You're trying to create more length. You create so much length, you can't help but float away from the floor. Floating up and lengthening down and floating up. Keep the glutes connected, the legs are stable, you're not wobbly side to side, and set it down. Then you're gonna add to this, you lift up, your elbow comes into your side, you extend your arm back, so we did something similar laying on your back, and then the arm goes overhead, you bring it in, lower down. Lift up, elbow to the side, extend the elbow, arm sweeps overhead, you lower down. And then start to make that one continuous expression instead of it being pieces. Elbow extend, sweep, lower down. Lift, elbow extend, sweep, lower down. Lift, extend, sweep. And lift, extend, sweep. Lift. One more. Just finish up even on both sides. And then you're gonna do both arms at the same time, just once. So you float up, elbows come back. Stay there once your arms are back. Let your shoulders roll forward a little, thumbs will point down. Then roll the shoulders open, lift your chest a little more. Roll the shoulders forward a little bit to soften down, and then roll the arms open to lift. And you're trying to use that connection into your shoulder girdle to help you get a little bit more lift. So it's kind of like you're a piece of seaweed floating on the surf here. You're kind of softening, and then you lift a little more. And you soften down, and you lift a little more. Last one, soften down, shoulders roll back, you lift a little more. Lower yourself back down. Take your arms out to the side like a letter T. Keep the pubic bone down. Turn the thumbs up towards the ceiling and lengthen your upper body up. Lift both arms off the floor. Little pulse of the arms up, down, up, down, up, down. And it might be an inch you're moving. It might just be hard to hold. And then lower back down. One more time. Getting longer, creating opposition and little float of the arms. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Lower down, last time. Getting longer, 5-pointed star here, reaching out in all directions. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Lower back down. You can leave the weights where they are. Bring your hands under your shoulders. Push yourself back into a little shell stretch, rounding back through your lower back, pressing the lower back open. And then we're going to come onto hands and knees again. Hands under the shoulders, knees under the hips. Leg pull front prep. So we're going to start with a prep. So you're going to push the floor away. Inhale, create more length through the spine. Exhale, float the knees into a low hover off the ground. Take a breath or so, and then set the knees back down. Do that a couple times. Inhale, exhale, float the knees off the ground into your low hover. And you can stay there for a couple breaths. You can stay there for one breath, whatever is better for you today. One more time. And then untuck the toes, sit back towards the heels. And then you're going to come onto your forearms again like we were earlier. So you're pushing the floor away. And if you'd like, you can take one of the weights and put it behind the back of your knee. We've done this before in this class. Flex your foot and press the weight up, keeping the hips level, and then tap your leg back down. So you're just lifting and lowering, trying to stay neutral. Lower and lift, and lower and lift. Good. And just a few more. Stay neutral through the spine. Try not to collapse into the arm. On the next one, the leg's going to go up and stay up. You're going to do a little pulse, 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 pulse. Trying to pulse from right underneath the glutes, right near the sit bone where the hamstring and glutes meet. 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then lower the knee. Keep the knee hovering a little bit off the ground. See if you can come up onto your hands and then go down onto your elbows. Hand, hand, forearm, forearm, hand, hand. What I like about this is you're asymmetrical, so it's a little bit hard to stabilize through the pelvis and not shift really big. So the abs and the hips have to work to balance you out. Yeah, that's right. Hopefully you feel some outer hips working. Last one. And then set that leg down. Switch the weight over to the other leg. Squeeze with the back of the knee. And going into that lift, tap down, lift up. Lower and lift. As you're doing a few here, try to keep the glutes connected. Pushing the floor away, trying to keep stable so you're not letting yourself shift forward at all. Down and press up and down. And last two. Last one stays up, little pulse. 2, 3, keep the leg tracking well so it's not wobbly. And then lower the leg down. So then you're going to hover the knee a little bit. Hand, hand, forearm, forearm, hand, hand, forearm, forearm. I feel this completely in the outside of the standing hip. Down, down, up, up, down, down. 4, 3, 2. Last one. And then set the leg down. Take the weight away. Sit back on your heels. Stretch one arm really far away from the opposite hip. Stretch across the lat. And then step the hands to the other side. Do the same thing. Stretch across your lat through the outer hips. And come back to the center. So we have one more little phrase to do here. So hands are going to come forward. Open the fingers up nice and wide so that you have some good connection going up into your forearm. And then press the hips open. You can either stay in a kneeling plank, or you could press yourself up into a full plank. Take a breath, neutral pelvis, connect the glutes a little bit, connect the abs to support you. When you need to, set the knees back down. And again, either kneeling plank or full plank. If you'd like to add to this, you can tap one foot out to the side, bring it back to the middle. I always find these easier just because it gives me more to think about and do versus just staying and holding. About 6, and then you can take a break, set the knees down, whatever you need, and we go again. Pressing yourself up, tapping or staying. And take a break when you start to lose form. One last set of these. So pressing yourself into your plank, tap. And when you're done with that, sit back. You're going to come to laying on your back. You can adjust to have anything you need under your head. Of course, you could do this with the weights, but you don't need to do this with the weights. If you're going to use the weights, it would be adding weight to the upper body, which would be making it a lot more difficult to lift up. You decide. Hands are going to come behind the head. You're going to point the elbows slightly up. Don't let them drop out to the side. Imprint, lift one leg up to tabletop. Lift the other leg up to meet it. Squeeze the inner thighs together. Slide ribs to hips. Squeeze the legs together. Rotate your upper body across towards one leg. And then center off. Try to go towards the leg, so up and forward versus just twisting to the side. Forward and across. Forward towards the thigh. Keep your imprint. If you can do it without it getting messy, you can add the leg extending. So you're going towards the bent leg. But if that starts to get messy, then just stay with both legs squeezing together. We're going to go into one more, and then we're going to go double time. So you rotate, don't stop in the middle, rotate. Rotate, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Lower your upper body down, set one leg down, and then the other. Take your legs wide apart, let your knees drop a little bit one way, and then the other. Doing a little bit of a stretch one way, stretch the other way, just to release the hips, get everything kind of chilling out again. And then you're going to bring your feet a little bit away from you. If you need to grab behind one leg to do this, you can. I'll show you that version first. So you're gonna push into the back of the leg, into the hands to roll up to the back of the sits bones, and then roll back down. We've also done this with a towel so that, like, if it's hard to grab a hold, you could put the towel behind your leg and you push your leg into the towel and you stay centered and you roll back down. Some of you may want to do the full version of teaser where your legs are down. You would come up to just back of the sits bones, stop, lengthen through the upper back and the upper body, and then roll back down. You also could do it with the legs lifted. So as you come up, you'd have to let the legs move away from you to come up to just back of the sits bones, lift the eyes and the arms, and roll back down. Probably not what I'm gonna do this morning, but bring the arms forward, rolling up. We're just trying to get length through the front of the hip flexors. Obviously, it's abdominal work as well. If it's too hard when you roll down to keep the arms overhead, then think about letting the arms go forward. Got about 2 more of whatever you're doing. So if you're only doing one leg, make sure to switch. Using your breath to help you. And one more time. Peeling up. Stop at the back of the sits bones, lengthen, and roll back down. Whenever you're done with that last one, you can hug your legs into your chest. We've been working on building teaser in several of my classes, and so we'll keep working on it to keep adding and making it more challenging. And then you're gonna roll onto your hands and knees again. And I wanna finish with a stretch because we're all sitting more than we would like. So step 1 foot forward. That might be hard already just to get your foot forward. And so what you want is that you're not having your knee directly over your hip. So you have to transfer your weight forward. If you need to use your hand or wiggle your toes, kind of walk your toes forward, that's fine. Then come up onto your knee, open the front of this hip, pull back on the abs. I hardly ever say flatten your lower back, but here's the one place where I don't want you tipping back with the pelvis. I want the pelvis pulling up and like you're trying to lift the pelvis so much it flattens the lower back. And that should take you into a little bit of hip flexor psoas stretch. And then slightly soften and release that a little bit. And then connect the abs, flatten the back, lengthen through the lower spine, get longer, and then slightly release that. If you're having trouble balancing, just do this next to some furniture. Yeah, or a wall. So instead of it just being you're lunging more forward and more back, I need you to change your pelvis, which I know is hard to do. And then return. Take your hands back, switch which leg is forward. And the leg comes forward, find your balance. So square your hips to the front, pull up on the abs, your back gets longer, you get taller, and then you slightly soften into it. And then you get taller, you're not collapsing, you're just softening a little bit. And pull up on the abs, connect the glutes, back gets long and flat, and then you release into it. And twice more, pull up on the abs and get long and flat. Doesn't feel good to be balanced right on top of the knee. So if you haven't lunged forward enough, that's one reason the knee can hurt. Also, if you have a ball or a foam roller, you can do this something like this. And usually it gets you off, your weight off of the knee. A bigger ball would be easier, but you can also try a ball behind the leg. Why am I going into all of this? Because I think, we all need to do this kind of more regularly. So something like that. It's a little wobblier, so the foam roller is a little easier. A bigger ball would push your leg this way more, which obviously would be more intense. You also could put just more padding. You just don't want your weight directly into your kneecap. You're trying to get your weight more on the front of the femur. All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming.